Hello and welcome to New Central Television. I am Likon Obanjo. Here are the stories making headlines beyond the continent. We begin the news in the Middle East, where many Palestinians have continued to flee Khan Yunis and Rafah following Israeli strikes on the southern Gaza Strip, with an expected assault on their last refuge of Rafah. Some families, already displaced several times and living in disassembled tents, have gathered their belongings to flee once again. Israel is preparing for a full-scale ground incursion into crowded southern Gaza City, where more than 1.4 million Palestinians are trapped. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has urged Hamas to quickly complete a prisoner deal to spare Palestinian people from the calamity of another catastrophic event.
بلغونا والله تعالوا المعبر الصبح الامن هنا ان احنا نرحل نخلي من المنطقه هذه وبقينا في خان يونس رحلونا اليهود من خان يونس على رفح روحوا على شمال رفح وغرب رفح يعني وجينا هنا عند المعبر وياك شفت الصبح اللي صار فينا خافوا كل الاطفال هي بنتي واولادي واولاد اخويا وعيلتنا وجيراننا وكنا مع بعض كنا بدنا نرحل من النتفه هذه مش عارفين وين بدنا نروح اقسم بالله يا رجل
نروح لا في سيارات ولا في شحون ومين ما اي شحن بتوقفه بتقول له بدنا نروح على الدير بقول لك 3000 شيكل و2000 شيكل واحنا هي المره الرابعه ننزح هي المره الرابعه وما حدا مطلع لنا ولا حدا مدور علينا ولا حتى الله والله العظيم بس الله اللي معنا والله يرحمنا برحمته اما احنا والله تبهدلنا ونزلينا من مكان لمكان من مكان لمكان وين نروح وين نجري مش عارفين.
In the meantime, negotiations to pause the Israel-Hamas war headed into a second day in Cairo on Wednesday as Israel launched a series of deadly strikes on Lebanon, stoking fears of an escalating conflict in the region. Mediators in Egypt are racing to secure a ceasefire and free the remaining hostages before Israel proceeds with a full-scale ground incursion into the Gaza Strip's crowded far southern city of Rafah. A Hamas source said a delegation headed to Cairo to meet Egyptian and Qatari mediators after Israeli negotiators held talks with the mediators on Tuesday. CIA Director William Burns had joined Tuesday's talks with David Barnea, head of Israel's Mossad intelligence service, which Egyptian media said had been mostly positive. U.S. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby described the negotiations as constructive and moving in the right direction. Let's also tell you that Palestine's Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki has visited Cyprus to discuss the island's efforts to provide humanitarian assistance to Gaza and boost their diplomatic ties. Cypriot's Foreign Minister Konstantinos Kombos said his country is committed to doing its part to increase humanitarian support to the besieged region. Kombos, after a meeting with his Palestinian counterpart in Nicosia, added that more aid is on the way in 2024.
I sensed the feeling of responsibility, collective humanitarian desire here that, we should work together. Cyprus as, a sovereign country and Cyprus as a member of the European Union and the international community is doing its utmost. It is our collective responsibility to prevent further escalation of the situation, further prolongation of the war, or further extension of the war to open other fronts, either in the West Bank or in South Lebanon or anywhere else.
We are committed to doing our part to increase humanitarian assistance. And in this context, we are in close cooperation and will continue to talk with the Palestinian side in relation to making possible the increase of humanitarian aid into Gaza.
Meanwhile, South Africa has submitted an urgent request to The Hague to consider if Israel's operations targeting Rafah are a breach of court orders. Last month, the International Court of Justice ordered Israel to do all it can to prevent the deaths of Palestinian civilians after South Africa accused its military of genocide in Gaza. With Israel's forces threatening a ground invasion of the southern Gaza city of Rafah, where 1.4 million Palestinians have fled, South Africa has sent a follow-up request. A statement issued by South Africa's presidency said it is gravely concerned that the unprecedented military offensive against Rafah has already led to and will result in further large-scale killing. Vast swaths of Gaza have been flattened, with about 80% of the population displaced, and a humanitarian catastrophe pushing more than a quarter of Palestinians towards starvation. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to press on until total victory and insisted that military pressure will secure freedom for remaining hostages taken by Hamas in its October 7 attack. Joining us now to give more insight to this is our international correspondent, Afia Hagen. Now, Afia, why has South Africa taken this action over the impending assault on Rafah?
Well, South Africa is no stranger to going to the ICJ when it comes to Israel. And at this time, like a lot of countries around the world, they are gravely concerned about what could happen in Rafah. Now, this is a coastal town that usually has a population of about 250,000 people. Now it's thought to be about 2.3 million people, as civilians are being kind of herded into that city, or have been, because of the ongoing conflict along that Gaza Strip. Now, if there is an assault on Rafah, it's thought that the humanitarian cause could be absolutely incredible. About 12,300 children have already died in this conflict, and that's just children, never mind their parents and older people as well who've been caught up in this conflict. So, South Africa, like other countries, gravely concerned about what could happen if this particular assault on this city, Rafah, goes ahead. So they have gone to the ICJ. They've been before, obviously, saying that Israel is committing genocide, but they are now going about this particular issue and saying that the rights of Palestinians have to be protected.
We had this discussion, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago, where we wondered or pondered if Israel would accede to the demands or to the directive of the ICJ to stop all acts of genocide. So now that this case has been taken to The Hague, that is the ICC, do you think the ICC has the power or the influence to stop Israel's onslaught on Palestinians, something that the ICJ lacks?
Well, no, because, Israel has continued with this course of action, despite the fact that there has been an outcry from The Hague, from the ICC, and from the ICJ. They have dismissed South Africa's claims that they are committing genocide in Palestine and said basically that it's a non-starter. Look, all these challenges might be happening in the background, but the fact remains that Israel is pushing on with this course of action, saying that what they are doing is trying to root out Hamas and other terrorist groups that could be against them. That's what they say they want to do, total destruction of Hamas. And it seems that innocent Palestinians are getting in the way. Israel sees them as collateral damage, but other people could see this as an act of genocide.
Now, we see that the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, has urged Hamas to quickly facilitate the prisoner swap deal. Is there any progress on a deal to release the hostages that remain in Gaza now?
Well, Israel says that is what it's pushing for, that is pushing for a deal that would lead to a ceasefire and perhaps more hostages being released. Now, at this moment in time, you have 134 hostages being kept by Hamas. They're still under Hamas control. 105 civilians have already been released, and you had a couple that were freed earlier on this week. They were rescued by IDF soldiers. Israel is saying that they are pressing on to total victory and insisted that military pressure is the only way to secure the freedom of these hostages. Other people might say that a ceasefire is a better way to secure the freedom of those hostages. Where we are now, talks have not progressed, and there is no deal to go to either a ceasefire or either a release of hostages. So as it stands, Rafah must prepare for the onslaught that is coming, that will supposedly free these hostages. But of course, there's always the risk that the hostages themselves may become collateral damage.
But then the U.S. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said that negotiations are progressing and constructive. So is that something we should not hold on to?
I mean, we can't hold on to anything at the moment because negotiations are so delicate and they're happening in the background all the time. Yes, they have been happening this week, but they've also happened at the end of last year. We did have that week-long ceasefire in November, which saw the freedom of about 100 hostages, and that was a great thing. These discussions are always happening in the background. They are always going on because Israel would like us to believe that the freedom of the hostages is paramount, is the thing that they want overall. So that we're always going to have these negotiations between all the actors, all the players in this conflict, whether that's the United States, the UK, you've got Qatar involved, Egypt. The negotiations are always happening in the background. But until we see hostages being released or until we see a ceasefire, that's the only time we're going to know that these negotiations have been successful.
Afi, again, thank you so much. It was nice talking to you. Away from that, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has inaugurated the largest Hindu temple in the Middle East in Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates. Modi had on Tuesday, ahead of the inauguration, said ties with the UAE had reached unprecedented heights. He spoke after the two governments signed deals, including a framework agreement on a major trade and transport route at the start of his third trip to the UAE in the past 8 months. The UAE is home to about 3.5 million Indian nationals, the largest expatriate community in the Gulf country.
Completely overwhelmed. You often hear the talks of peace, harmony, and unity, but when you actually get to witness it, when you come to the Festival of Harmony right here in Abu Dhabi, and you see all these people from all walks of life, all kinds of different faiths and cultures, all coming together to celebrate, it's truly beautiful.
The importance of this is, it's not just the Hindus, but even all the local Arabian communities are coming together, right? And it's the first of its kind because all creeds of people, all communities are coming together to celebrate this landmark temple in the UAE.
We continue the news with yet another conflict, but this time in Europe, where Russian bombing raids killed 3 people, including a child, near Ukraine's eastern city of Donetsk. According to local authorities, the strikes hit 9 apartment blocks and a hospital in Seledov, about 20 kilometers west of the front line. 12 people were also injured in the bombing, including 4 children. The governor of Donetsk region, Vadim Filachkin, said the first strike took place at around 11:30 p.m. late on Tuesday, and the second at around 1 a.m. local time. He added that about 100 patients were evacuated from the damaged hospital to the nearby towns of Pokrovsk and Mirnograd. Seledov, which had a population of around 21,000 before the war, is located on the outskirts of the large city of Donetsk, which has been occupied by Russia since 2014. But I'll tell you that British Foreign Secretary David Cameron, on a visit to Bulgaria, has urged members of the U.S. Congress to do the right thing and approve a Ukraine aid package. The Republican leader of the U.S. House of Representatives on Tuesday blocked war aid for Ukraine, ignoring President Joe Biden's plea that passing the bill was vital for standing up to Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. The bill was approved in the Senate earlier on Tuesday. It includes $95 billion in funding, mostly for the security of pro-Western Ukraine, as well as for the top U.S. strategic priorities of Israel and Taiwan. He warned approving the package was absolutely crucial for American security and the whole world. Would watch Congress decision.
And I urge members of Congress in the United States who will be looking at this today to vote for their package. This is absolutely crucial for American security. The whole world is going to be watching what happens in Congress. We have the economic strength, we have the military strength, we have the diplomatic strength. We know that we are on the right side of fighting off this illegal aggression. All we need to show is that we have the political will. If you add up the countries that support Ukraine, we outmatch Russia economically 25-1. All we have to do is to make that economic strength pay. And I hope that happens in Washington in the coming hours, and I know that we have a strong ally here in Bulgaria. who are doing so much to help the Ukrainians in their fight.
Well, still in the region, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg said on Wednesday that 18 of the alliance's 31 countries are set to hit its defense spending targets this year after Donald Trump threatened to encourage Russia to attack members not coughing up enough. The Republican White House frontrunner was widely rebuked after saying he would not defend NATO members who had not met their financial obligations in its most extreme broadside yet against the organization. Trump's comments in a Saturday stump speech drew condemnation from leaders, including U.S. President Joe Biden, his likely opponent in November's election, and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Stoltenberg laid out new defense spending estimates showing the number of states reaching 2% of gross domestic product, which was expected to jump from 11 in 2023.
Last year, we saw an unprecedented rise of 11% across European allies and Canada. This year, I expect 18 allies to spend 2% of their GDP on defense. That is another record number, and a six-fold increase from 2014, when only 3 allies met the target. And we should leave no room for miscalculation or misunderstanding in Moscow about our readiness and our commitment, our resolve to protect all allies. And the reason to do so is not to provoke a conflict, but is to prevent the conflict, as NATO has done successfully for 75 years.
In the meantime, Estonian head of diplomacy, Margus Tsahkna, says that despite Donald Trump's recent statements, the United States would remain a solid NATO ally. He stated this during a meeting with his Polish counterpart, Radosław Sikorski. According to Tsahkna, Estonia is ready to close all its borders with Russia if necessary.
During the election campaign, I think that in any countries, many things will be said, and rhetorics are very strong. But I think that whatever Trump says, we have to understand that we have to put our part. And Estonia is putting this year 3.2% of GDP to NATO, and also Poland is putting 3% or even more with the extra fundings. So we invest to our defense to be ready. And I'm sure that the US will remain our strong ally in NATO as well.
Że NATO to nie firma ochroniarska, że pierwszy raz artykuł 5 został użyty na rzecz Stanów Zjednoczonych po atakach terrorystycznych 11 września. Polska wysłała brygadę do Afganistanu i nie wysłaliśmy do Waszyngtonu rachunku za tą brygadę i za życie naszych żołnierzy.
In France, a Paris appeals court on Wednesday confirmed a conviction against former President Nicolas Sarkozy for illegal campaign financing, but lightened his one-year prison sentence. The appeals court said he should serve 6 months, with another 6 months suspended. The ruling was still harsher than a one-year suspended sentence that prosecutors called for. The Paris court confirmed the lower court's guilty verdict for Sarkozy on charges that he illegally hid overspending in his unsuccessful 2012 re-election campaign. It remains unlikely he would ever go to prison. Such short terms in France are usually served as a form of house arrest with a tag. His lawyer, Vincent Desri, said the combative ex-presidents will challenge the verdict at France's highest courts.
C'est que la Cour d'appel a confirmé le fait qu'il s'agissait d'une organisation frauduleuse de dépassement des comptes de campagne. Ce que l'on a dit à l'époque, savoir qu'il ne s'agissait pas de l'affaire Malion, mais de l'affaire dite des comptes de campagne du candidat Nicolas Sarkozy, a été confirmé par le tribunal et il est de nouveau aujourd'hui confirmé par la Cour.
Now we tell you that Pope Francis presides over service celebrating Ash Wednesday at the Basilica of St. Sabina on Rome's Aventine Hill to mark the first day of the Lenten fast. The 87-year-old pontiff is dubbed with Ash, the traditional reminder of human mortality, after delivering a homily to those gathered in the Basilica. Similar to last year, the Pope took part in the penitential procession leading up to the Mass. The procession began at 4:30 p.m. local time at the Church of Sant Anselmo and ended at St. Sabina just in time for the 5 p.m. Mass. In America, the House of Representatives has narrowly voted to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, making him the first cabinet member to face impeachment in nearly 150 years. Many Republicans blame Mayorkas for an unprecedented influx of migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border. The Republican-led chamber voted 214 to 213 for the measure after the first attempted failed last week. President Joe Biden had on Tuesday called the vote a blatant act of unconstitutional partisanship and a political stunt. However, opponents of Mayorkas accused him of not living up to his oath to well and faithfully discharge the duties of his office by failing to do more to secure the border. We now head to South America, where Colombia's Chief Justice García Chavera says a violent protest outside the Supreme Court headquarters demanding the designation of a new Attorney General is an act of aggression, and that the court is waiting for the safety conditions necessary to hold sessions. The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights has urged the country's top courts to choose a new Attorney General amid an ongoing row between President Gustavo Petro and the last holder of the position, whom the leftist leader accused of conspiracy to oust him.
Porque evidentemente fue un hecho de agresión y de violencia contra la Corte Suprema de Justicia y contra los magistrados de la Corte Suprema de Justicia. ¿Por qué fue un acto de agresión y de violencia contra los magistrados de la Corte Suprema de Justicia? Porque la Corte fue sitiada. Las puertas de ingreso y de salida de la Corte Suprema de Justicia fueron bloqueadas. Y eso es un acto de agresión en tanto representó una afectación a la libre movilidad de los magistrados, de los empleados que se encontraban para ese día dentro de la corporación.
Indonesian Defense Minister Prabowo Subianto has a strong lead in the race for the presidency of Southeast Asia's biggest economy. Preliminary results from pollsters showed after polls closed. Official results are not due until next month, but at least 2 independent pollsters who collected a sample of votes at polling stations for so-called quick counts, previously shown to be reliable, put Subianto on more than 55%, with nearly 2/3 of the voting sample counted. Subianto needs to claim more than 50% of the overall vote and at least 1/5 of ballots cast in over half the country's 38 provinces to secure the presidency over his rivals Anies Baswedan and Ganjar Pranowo.
Sampai what next? Kita lihat dulu sampai selesai semuanya, ya. Kita tunggu, jangan buru-buru. Siap. Jangan buru-buru menyimpulkan. Kita hormati proses dan kita hormati proses di KPU sampai semua selesai. Pak, tapi kan kasih waktu pada KPU untuk kerja. Jangan kita tergiring untuk harus segalanya cepat sekarang. Kita tunggu sampai KPU tuntas.
And that's all at this hour. Don't forget to send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can also watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Likon Onobanjo.